My name is Allison Dennis, and I am the Executive Director of the Sitka Center for Art and Ecology, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to this show and tell event as we welcome the first 5 of 30 artists, writers, musicians, natural scientists, and interdisciplinary creatives Sitka will host on our Oregon Coast campus this fall through spring. We want to thank the Harold and Arlene Schnitzer Care Foundation and Jordan Schnitzer for their extraordinary signature sponsorship of Sitka's 50th anniversary year. Thank you. We also want to thank our event sponsors, McMinimans, Framing Resource, Brian Potter Design, Siltstone Wines, Schwabe, Williamson and Wyatt, Tom and Ellen Abrego, and Judy Vogland and Bob Dayton. Thanks one and all for sponsoring Sitka's events throughout the years. We have 5 residents to introduce you to today. Each will have about 10 minutes to introduce themselves and to share their work with you. And I'll come back and introduce you to each one in between their presentations. And the first presenter is going to be Samantha Wall. Samantha Wall, originally from Seoul, South Korea, is an artist working in Portland, Oregon. Wall immigrated to the United States as a child and comes from a multicultural background. Operating from within this framework, her drawings embody the experience of navigating transcultural identity. Wall graduated with an MFA in Visual Studies from the Pacific Northwest College of Art, and she is the recipient of awards and grants from organizations including the Oregon Arts Commission, Crow's Shadow Institute for the Arts, the Ford Family Foundation, and the Joan Mitchell Foundation. At Sitka, Wall is participating in our Jordan Schnitzer printmaking residency program, through which established artists who are not printmakers work for 2 weeks with master printmaker Julia DeMario to produce a series of prints. And it has been a treat to peek at Samantha's work in progress. Viewers, I know it seems like we can't hear you, but I promise you that we can. So wherever you are, please make some noise and help me welcome Samantha Wall to Sitka.
Thank you, Allison. So I have a slide presentation that I'm going to share. Figure out how to do this. All right. Okay, move these images out of the way. All right, so most of the work that I'm sharing today is work from this year. There are a few bodies of work from previous years. This first body of work is titled Foreign Body. And these are ink drawings on paper that are about 20 by 15. And all of this work was made during the pandemic. Like many folks I spoke with over the phone or through Zoom, I felt disbelief and shock over the state of the world. And I felt disconnected from reality. And I needed to find a way to ground myself, you know. So I began working on these to help me resolve, you know, this experience, and also help me document what it was like to live through this unprecedented time. And making this work, it really helped me do that. So every maybe 2 or 3 weeks or so, when I guess basically when things felt like my body was holding too much, I would take images. I would sit down in my studio and use a wireless remote and take digital photographs. And and I would take images in bursts. And so I might end up with, I don't know, anywhere from like 500 to 1,000 digital images, and I would sift through them. And oftentimes a lot of those images would feel very self-conscious, and they would feel kind of flat. But every once in a while, there were, you know, usually like, and maybe like a handful of images that felt like they communicated something more. They felt like they were giving me some insight into the sort of delicate nature of our interiority and communicating some kind of truth that was even evasive to me and helped me then process what I was experiencing. And so I would use that photograph as source material. I would draw a kind of light line drawing on the paper, and then kind of treat the ink like watercolor. I would wet sections of the drawing and introduce the ink. And this way of working allowed me to balance the kind of chaos and, I don't know, this almost like wild energy I was feeling with control, so that the images were recognizable, but that also they felt like they were communicating something that that just are the moment I was experiencing. I probably made, I don't know, 35 or 6 portraits. And I had a show of this work at Rousseau Lee Gallery in August. So another body of work that well, I guess it's just like a handful of drawings I made this year that were part of a body of work that I made in 2017 are clenched fists, and these are ink on Duralar, which is a synthetic paper that's similar to Yupo. It's you know, kind of a plastic essentially. And I made several of these drawings for Converge 45, which is a citywide contemporary art platform that's in Portland, and they bring together international and regional artists through a guest curator. And because they couldn't proceed with their normal programming this year, they commissioned 12 Portland artists to create artwork that would be translated into posters that they put up throughout the city. And the piece on the left is the drawing that was made into a poster. And this is one of the pieces that I made in 2017. And that body of work was titled 31 Days. And I made one drawing every day in January of 2017 and also in December of 2017. And the work, I kind of think of it as a diptych, though I think at the time I didn't realize it. The work was a way to deal with a lot of I guess, again, this emotional overload I was experiencing. I was deep in grief. My sister had passed away in November of 2015, and you know, and Trump was elected, and I felt a lot of uncertainty about my future, and I felt like I'd lost my way as an artist. And so I had to reinstate a kind of ritual and practice that I'd lost touch with. And making these every day helped me do that. It also helped me feel connected to this larger narrative, I think, that the fist, you know, represents. And slowly, I think, helped me feel hopeful again. This is a compilation of all 62 drawings. And the work right now, the December pieces are in a traveling exhibition through the Hallie Ford Foundation. And this work was just up at Disjecta. And when I presented the work, it's the layout is the format of the month of December in 2017. Oh, and this is an example of how I work with ink on Duralar. And so I have to prep the material with alcohol to remove any oils, like from my fingertips or anything that's on the surface of the paper, and then I introduce water and then the ink and manipulate it with paintbrushes. So it feels like I'm like, I don't know, playing with a puddle of inky water. So this is work that I showed in September of 2018, and it's titled In the Wake, and it's made in a similar way. This is, these panels are 40 inches wide by 84 inches long. And again, I was still grieving my sister, feeling that the sort of ritual of grieving, it felt really incomplete to me. And I was thinking about, I've spent some time in New Orleans, and I was thinking about the second lines I witnessed there, and various kinds of like funerary processions. I was also interested in, I mean, I'm still quite interested in Korean shamanism, and watched this video of a young shaman being initiated by an elder shaman, and she had her arms raised in the air, and as if she was kind of calling forth, you know, the spirits of ancestors and deities. And there was something very striking and moving about that gesture, and it helped me feel connected to this kind of matrilineal line, since many of the shamans are women. And it was one of the few times while researching Korean culture that I felt like I could see myself within a continuum. And so when I was making this work, I drew from that, or I was inspired by that video, and took my own images that I then developed into these panels. And I worked on both sides of the Duralar so that these panels felt like they had more depth. And the work is currently at the PDX airport in Concourse D. If in, I don't know when you're able to fly again safely. And so this is the last body of work I'm showing, or the newest project. This is work that I developed for the Facebook offices in Redmond, Washington, in January of this year. And this is a 28-foot site-specific installation. And again, I was inspired by Korean ritual narratives of cleansing and healing to help me speak about my personal loss, but then to also acknowledge the cultural loss that is a common element within immigrant stories. This work is composed of the Duralar, ink on Duralar, and the sleeves are made, they're composed of this adhesive paper that I adhered silk tissue paper onto to get this texture, and then a gold leaf on top of that. And I think there's also gold leaf on the back of the Duralar to give the hands this kind of warm glow. And I think I've got a few close-ups in here, and like yeah, the texture on the silk, it's just so fine. It's really difficult to see unless you're really up close. I think this is a short video that I just, okay. Let me try this again. Okay. It's really difficult to get a photo of this because it was in a hallway. Oh, that's really choppy. Okay, and that concludes my presentation. Thank you. Let's see.
Thank you so much, Samantha, and thanks for so many images and the videos. They were wonderful to see, so don't worry about them at all. What a treat to see your work. Kirsten Valdezquade is the author of Night at the Fiestas, which won the John Leonard Prize from the National Book Critics Circle, the Sue Kaufman Prize for First Fiction from the American Academy of the Arts and Letters, and a 5 Under 35 award from the National Book Foundation. Kirsten was awarded a Rome Prize, a Rana Jaffe Foundation Writers Award, and a Stegner Fellowship. Her work has appeared in The New Yorker, the Best American Short Stories, the O. Henry Prize Stories, and elsewhere. She is an assistant professor at Princeton. Her novel, The Five Wounds, is forthcoming from Norton. Please join me in welcoming Kirsten Valdezquade to Sitka.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much, Allison. And thank you, Samantha. Gosh, those are gorgeous. What a treat to see them. I'm just so grateful to be here at Sitka and so grateful to all of the staff for the warm welcome and to all of you for being here today. I'm going to read an excerpt from an essay that was published in the New York Times. It's called The Skull Trade. When I was 11 and my sister 6, my parents pulled us out of our new Australian school for a 6-week-long research trip across the belly of the continent. A year earlier, we had moved to Canberra, where my dad was doing a postdoc in geochemistry at the Australian National University, and now we were setting out to explore this vast new country. Our 4-wheel drive on loan from the university was a troop carrier that could, in a pinch, be used to transport prisoners. My sister and I sat in back with the camping equipment and soil samples, perched on side-facing benches too narrow for even our skinny butts, separated from our parents by a wire grill as if we were unruly dogs. The back opened only from the outside, so at every stop we'd have to wait to be set free. My dad drove, his grubby Indiana Jones hat planted on his head, Tivas strapped to his feet, squinting determinedly at the horizon. "There's no place like Australia," he announced with enthusiasm. "It's incredibly geomorphically stable." Beside him, my mother read Trollope. In the back, my sister and I read or squabbled or paged through activity books. My whole life, we had accompanied my dad on his quest for dirt, mostly around the American Southwest. He studied, still studies, desert geology. We were used to roughing it, used to the sleeping bags and the grime and the new schools, used to making friends, and then, once we'd made them, moving on. I attended 8 elementary schools with some casual homeschooling in between. We lived in rentals and apartments and trailers and tents and out of our '67 Volkswagen van, which was so rusted that you could lift the torn linoleum beneath your feet and watch the highway blur below. The only certainty I had was that I'd better not get too close to friends, because before long, I would be moving on. This time as we set out, my father offered us a stake in the trip. $2, girls, for every kangaroo skull you find. Why he needed those skulls is a little hazy. I believe he was comparing the tooth enamel of these modern kangaroos to that of fossilized herbivores to determine their diets, and therefore the flora of that long ago landscape. He probably lectured us about radiocarbon dating and the elemental composition of enamel, about paleoclimates and C3, C4 plant material, but if so, I missed it because I was already running calculations. The Australian $2 coin, with its profile of an Aboriginal elder, was thick and heavy, exactly like, I imagined, a doubloon. I pictured hundreds of them clinking dully against each other in my backpack. I should say up front that the trip wasn't just about kangaroo skulls, and we saw incredible things. Kangaroo Island off South Australia was the trip's highlight. There we experienced beaches and camped in a real campground. We saw koalas, wallaroos, and best of all, fairy penguins, the smallest and most enchanting penguin species. But what I remember most vividly about that trip 25 years ago are the kangaroo skulls and the glorious promise of wealth. In the early days of the trip, I sought the sun-bleached, wind-worn skulls, teeth rattling loose in the jaw. I'd shake the red soil from the ocular cavities, hand them over to my father as he scribbled in his field notebook, and pocket the coin. But as we inched into the continent's interior, stopping whenever some outcrop or dirt pile caught my father's eye, I realized I could be wealthier than I had ever imagined if I availed myself of the skulls still firmly rooted in their carcasses. With few natural predators left, the kangaroo population of Central Australia is enormous, and its human population, though sparse, has excellent aim. Most vehicles in the outback are outfitted with rhubars, large metal contraptions strapped to the hoods like orthodontic headgear. The shoulders of the highways were littered with roadkill, wallabies and wallaroos and kangaroos in various stages of decomposition, leading the way to Alice Springs and beyond. I'd kneel on my seat, scanning the side of the road greedily. Pull over, I'd command through the grill and over the sounds of the engine and the wind blasting through the open windows. Then I'd wait, jittery with anticipation, to be let out. It's not easy to dismantle a medium-sized mammal. With my father's rock pick, I gouged at the dull, bristly hide of the nearest mummifying kangaroo, prizing apart bones and leathery tendons, mouth-breathing through the nausea all the while. As I worked, the hot wind blew across the desert, mounding tiny dunes around the tires of our lone truck. I'd pick up each head by an ear, barely registering the desiccated lips drawn back from yellow teeth, and, hoping the flesh held, I'd toss the whole thing into a sample bag. Then I'd tie it shut with a twist tie, wipe the decomp off on my shorts, and help myself to potato chips. My sister was out of the game from the start. She didn't have the upper arm strength necessary to hack a head from a body. But her real problem was that she didn't want it enough. She hadn't learned to be disappointed by life, didn't understand that money could remedy those disappointments. There was so much I wanted: sports girl brand jeans with flowers stitched on the pockets, a wheeled suitcase, a ferret. I wanted to move back to America. I wanted a best friend, preferably my old best friend from 2 schools before, but really any best friend would do. Mostly I wanted to enroll in one school and stay there for the rest of my life. There aren't many pictures from this trip, or any of our family trips really. Most are of landscapes, or are close-ups of soil with my dad's rock pick in there for scale. A few, though, feature people. In these, my sister and I grinned into the camera, hair knotted, our cheeks red and scaly with windburn. But while my sister's expression has a sweetness to it, humanity, really, my eyes glint, feral and obsessive. After a couple of days, I no longer gagged as I worked. Maggots, brains, milky, unseeing eyes in their sockets. I handled it all with professional efficiency. Soon I couldn't see a kangaroo bounding through the desert or grazing on hummock grass without thinking of the skull behind those living, thick-lashed eyes. I'd wonder how long that kangaroo had before it keeled over and then decomposed entirely. I'd wonder to what extent it needed me to help it along. Oh, we were a spectacle, in our filthy clothes, sample bags of gore piled on the roof of the truck. Once pulling into a gas station, we watched as the attendant surreptitiously gave his armpits a sniff. First relief, then confusion and horror registered on his face as he realized that we were the source of the stench. I might have gone on forever, amassing a fortune $2 at a time and descending into Ahab-grade derangement. I might have had a future as a butcher or a serial killer. But within weeks, market forces intervened, and I learned a bitter lesson in economics. As I brought in more and more skulls, my father saw his mistake, and the price he offered plummeted, $2 to 1, from $1 to 50 cents. My income, like the carbon-14 my dad was measuring, was in a state of radioactive decay. Possibly the roof of the truck couldn't accommodate any more putrefaction. Possibly, my dad began to dread the prospect of opening my sample bags in his lab, or maybe he just had enough teeth for his enamel study. Whatever the reason, the skull market crashed, and with it, my entrepreneurial spirit. I didn't especially hold this against my dad. I knew money was tight, but nonetheless, I felt disdainful of that girl who had been willing to do such undignified things for a doubloon. Suddenly, I saw myself as another, prettier girl might see me, a girl back at Garran Primary School in Canberra, say, crass and desperate, dirty and wild-eyed, with a terrible American accent, sawing away at roadkill like a maniac. I was sharply aware that even if I had gotten rich, I'd still just be myself, almost 12 years old, in a ratty t-shirt, locked in the back of a troop carrier, being taken wherever my parents were taking me. And at least for the time being, there wasn't a thing I could do about it. That was a quarter century ago. Now I'm a writer. My work takes place indoors, and I mostly avoid touching dead things. I own a hatchback with both air conditioning and a functional radio, and it couldn't take me off-road if my life depended on it. I still hike, but on marked trails. The last time I camped, I actually brought my down duvet. I have many of the things I wanted so much as a child: home, stability, a wheeled suitcase. But sometimes sitting at my computer in the quiet of my house, I wonder where that girl has gone, that girl who could identify tracks and scats and didn't mind smelling a little gamey. To that girl, the world was traversable, the future so full of possibility that she saw promise even in animal remains. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kirsten. Kirsten is one of 2 residents we're hosting this fall that will be staying at Sitka for our full 3.5-month-long fall residency. Other residents are staying for as a stay from about 2 weeks up to those 3.5-month-long stays. So Kirsten is one, and so is our next resident. Phil House will be with us for the next 3.5 months. Phil is a rap artist from the south side of Chicago, most recently residing in the San Francisco Bay Area. He has been performing and writing rap music for the past 16 years, beginning with a rap group named Sons of Thunder that performed in small venues all over Chicago during his mid and late teen years, to now working mostly independently in whatever city, and now that he's at Sitka, in whatever forest he may find himself. Phil uses his experience of having lived in multiple places around the country to tell a story that's multi-layered, but still deeply rooted in the south side of Chicago context from which he hails. Phil hopes to write songs that inspire people to see the best in themselves, in their neighbors, and in the entire world around them. Please make some noise and help me welcome Phil House to Sitka.
Hello all. Thank you, Allison. Thank you, Kirsten, for that passage. Yeah, just glad to be here. Glad to kind of continue my journey in this space. And, like I say, I just moved from the Bay Area, or not moved, but I came up here from the Bay Area. And yeah, I think even that, and even this year has spoken to me in some new ways, and that I hope to add to the music I'm producing. And yeah, see what comes, and continue that journey of hopefully providing hope, naming darkness that I've seen, and also hopefully providing hope in the midst of that. The songs I like to perform today are both renditions of songs you may have heard already. The first one being River, which was written and performed by Leon Bridges. And the other is Sea of Love by Cat Power. But River, especially, I think that Cat Power is just kind of a short verse for me. But this rendition of River, that song I think has really spoken to me recently. It's just kind of being this escape, but not just an escape, but almost like a refuge from whatever's going on. If you watch the video for River, you see him, it looks like someone's been shot. And then you just see the people who experience that, the family and the neighborhood, just kind of go through, kind of enduring that suffering and mourning that person and mourning that moment. You don't hear words, but you just see images of them enduring that. And so kind of taking on that story, just thinking of the river for myself as just this escape, this refuge, this sort of gift of life and source of life that, you can escape to, or I can escape to in the midst of whatever's going on. I especially like it too, even thinking ecologically as, again, like a gift, not so much something that has to be earned or that someone has control over, but it's just a gift we can all take hold of and find refuge in. And it doesn't discriminate, it's not selective in who it provides for. It's just there for all of us. So that's kind of the first song that I added to or worked around, and I'm gonna try to play and perform to. The other one is Sea of Love, and that was just kind of a short, like, little love song. And I think I just added to it and just like making a letter out of it, a short verse that's kind of a message, kind of echoing that same thing. I like folk music, and I definitely love hip hop, so I try to blend the two or incorporate the two and things I do. So I think that contributed to what I made. So without further ado, I'll get going. So this is River. Hold on a second, sorry. Point out the path, let the tears flow to a place that we laugh. I'm starting to drown, and I'm needing to breathe, I'm longing to gas. I know that I've asked to get out of jail so much I'm ignoring the math. You wanting to swim, I just want to lay there, call this river a bath. The fire's around, but I know a place is cool and no one would drown. It all seems dark, but I hear the water flow, so I follow the sound. I long for a sip, no man can stop me, cause this water's a gift. The one that keeps running, I used to work 10 days, then beg for a drip. Take me to the river. The whole family eats, see the river flow as it waters the trees, bringing me joy, so I'm good now to my father's relief. I trust in the earth, it would not make what it couldn't sustain. The water's so good, bringing rest to me that I couldn't explain. I couldn't complain, there's a river there and it's giving me air. I walked to it broken, with some hard things that I couldn't repair. I'm longing for guidance, I'm close now, so grab my hand. The river will guide us out the horrible places they trapped us in. So give me a map so I don't get lost from here. Don't know what it takes, but I already bought it whenever the cost come clear. This is my story, I didn't choose it, but still it's mine on mine. Call hard times, I'm staying up late, just hoping the time goes by. And it never leaves, the group's my man, no friends, we still real close. The river's the way, every day I pray somehow that we feel those boats. To take us away to a place where we don't feel bad, to fulfill those folks. There's fog in the air, we scared, but we cannot leave, this is still our home. Carry me home, I'm calling on nights that I need to hear your voice. When I'm feeling lost, I follow the path of those that have gone before. Taking my time, I know that the river's there on my scariest days. When it feels too much, I dive to the deep end and get carried away. Look for my steps, you'll see in these woods, I've been blazing a trail. Look to the sky when we feel any rainfall and it's making us well. I'm longing for peace, I know I deserve it. I've been searching for miles. I went to the river with nothing but pain on, and it turned me around. You know what, I meant to provide some lyrics, so I'll give you the next ones. I imagine some of that is hard to hear. How do I? Oh, there we go. Okay. So in the chat, you should see the lyrics for the next song I'll do. This one is See You Look. They always fail to do it. I love you more, but always fail to prove it. The words I love you really are the truest, but I'm trying to paint a picture, something that is really moving. I just thought of a joke we used to have. I'm happiest on days that we cross paths. I want to give you something that'll show it, not for Christmas, not for birthday, but just because you asked. You showed me how our love was really simple. It's just a friend that never roots against you. I think I got 100 years to show you, so I'm taking it real slow, and I hope that's not an issue. I feel scared whenever we get close, and even on the lights sent by your phone. I cheer for you each time you see the world, and I'm really, really dig it when you come and visit home. All right, thank you.
Thank you for that musical interlude, Phil. Athena Copenhaver is a writer, editor, science communicator, and certified climate interpreter, currently earning her keep in the nonprofit sector. She has ghostwritten book chapters about cities plagued by factory farming, air pollution, and automobile traffic, and she has written about migrating white sharks, threatened sea otters, and depleted Pacific bluefin tuna. In recent years, she's been exploring how best to contribute to the global transition toward compassion and justice for all people, animals, and the living world. She holds degrees in English and Environmental Studies from Santa Clara University, and in 2009, she earned her Master's of Art in Culture and Modernity from the University of East Anglia in England. In 2019, her novel manuscript, Deep Shade, won the Sitka Prize for New Environmental Literature from Ashland Creek Press. Please join me in welcoming Athena Copenhaver to Sitka.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay? I'm just gonna take it that you can. Okay, great. Thank you so much to everyone here at the Sitka Center. As some of our residents have expressed already, I just feel totally filled with gratitude to be here. And it's because of having won the Sitka Prize from Ashland Creek Press that I'm actually able to be here. Part of the reward for winning was a 2-week residency here, and I'm so happy to be here. I'm pleased to report that I'm making good progress on my next novel. So today I'm going to be reading to you. I'll just start off with the first chapter of my novel manuscript, Deep Shade, and just a little bit of background, some context. This story follows a millennial woman who's really struggling with terrible eco-anxiety, mostly surrounding the global climate emergency, of course. And she's sort of bored by her lackluster boyfriend and isn't really sure what to do with herself. Although she thinks she has some interesting idiosyncrasies to try to get around this terrible eco-anxiety that she has. And then she meets her boyfriend's mother. And her mother, his mother is this really fascinating character, but kind of this toxic and intoxicating person that Kara, the main character, becomes obsessed with. So without further ado, and just a brief content warning, it's appropriate that Kirsten already talked a little bit about animal remains, but we've got a little bit of bodily injury to animals and people that are happening right off the bat. So just fair warning there. In the same way, some people look out over a rolling green field, feel the powerful lightness of limitless possibilities. I look out over the same field and wonder how many have writhed in pain across its sweeping bounds. A deer mutilated by a roaring vehicle, its leg swinging from the stifle. A soldier hit with shrapnel, his gastrocnemius shredded, or another contemplating the contents of her entrails in her hands, like a mystic deciphering tea leaves. It's almost a talent to read the subtext of the world, to look into a forest and see it raised, to see a gleaming new piece of technology and flash to its end, a grimy child in a war-torn region combing with bloodied fingers through heaps of once shining electronics, disemboweling motherboards for precious metals. We were trained to see this, groomed to understand production, quantify its purpose and its damage, righteously eschew it, and then organize strategic initiatives to educate, inspire, and enact change in our communities, as if this unseasonable warmth, this incongruous cold, the desperate fires, the depraved droughts were little more than difficult yoga poses we need to hold just a moment longer. But first, we must acknowledge the problem, they say, and it turns out my whole life to date has been an acknowledgement of every problem, it seems. As if our society said, we need someone who can bear witness to everything so the rest of us don't have to. And my soul, spastically waving its hand, volunteered. So my martyred consciousness landed in San Francisco, California, where I stood along the darkened hypotenuse of the bathroom door's shadow, spying on my boyfriend, Danielson James, Dan. He was shirtless in boxers, squeezing whiteheads around the edges of his nose, and then he started to examine his back. He leaned his weight against the rim of the sink, slumped his shoulders to fit into the mirror, close enough that he could see the pimples or skin flakes or whatever he was getting at. As I watched Dan in the mirror, his lips downturned and stretched open with the unabashed banality of someone completely consumed with the important preening of one's physical specimen, a small black house spider skittered across the mirror. Dan pulled away in surprise and then leaped in again to inspect it. My breath caught in my throat. The spider stopped as if to consider its options, move and risk being squashed, or keep still and hope to blend in with the scenery. Initially, I thought Dan would call me in to rescue the spider with a glass jar and an old bank statement. Then I grew nervous. Dan would act against how I exactly hoped he would act. He moved away from the mirror, leaned over towards the toilet, and peeled off a patch of toilet paper. I stretched my neck out into the exposed parallelogram of light from the bathroom and then back again as he returned to the mirror, as I risked being seen behind his reflection. And then he crumpled the toilet paper around the tiny spider and crushed it with his fingertips. I silently sucked in air, horrified. I covered my mouth with my hand and slipped against the wall before peeking back just in time to see him open the white folds like a child opening a paper chatterbox on the playground. What might be under this flap? I was nearly in the bathroom by now, watching this scene in disgust and rage. I couldn't decipher what pissed me off more, that I chose not to barge in and save the spider's life, that I risked the spider's life to reveal Dan's true self, that I had witnessed Dan's true self at all, or that I now knew, with eyewitness evidence, that he was someone who killed spiders when he thought I wasn't watching. What else was he capable of or regularly already doing when I wasn't there? I contemplated these various furies as I watched Dan flip up the lid to the toilet with his bare foot and toss the spider, undignified in its toilet paper burial shroud, into the toilet bowl. And then he flushed. Adding insult to injury, he wasted 2.5 gallons of fresh water to dispose of a harmless spider's corpse. In that moment, I despised him. He knew it would have made me happy to rescue the spider, move its tiny articulating limbs to the ficus near the balcony where it could better capture bugs and generally be out of the way, but still helpful. But he chose to kill it, and I chose to let him do it. I knew which was worse. And then without any further ceremony, it was all over. Dan checked his face and neck in the mirror quickly, flipped off the light switch, and flung open the door. By the time he was walking out into the hallway, I was 2 or 3 steps from the couch. It was a Sunday morning, and all I really wanted was to sit around doing nothing, but I read a study recently about how Paleolithic people derived the majority of their calories from plants and consumed over 100 grams of fiber per day. So I would more than likely spend the remainder of the day scanning the buzz on this topic, poring over threads, consuming videos, and fighting with people in the comments. Sometimes my thumbs got sore from typing into my phone on the weekends, and I had to do little idiotic stretches to keep them from cramping. Sometimes I would ask Dan to hold my thumbs, and as a testament to how tolerant he could be, he would do it without question, without even looking up from his laptop, really. I sat down on the couch and tried to look casual, my heart hammering as I thought about Dan's cruelty to the spider, the important task ahead of me, to pretend I hadn't been spying, that I didn't see Dan kill the spider, and that everything was fine. So I got a call from work today, he said. He analyzed his pointer finger cuticle. It's looking like a week from tomorrow. For how long? I said. 6 weeks. Oh, that's not too bad, I said, surprisingly chipper. I forced myself into kindness lest I allowed my disappointment in him to fester into passive-aggressive reality. Maybe we could do brunch with my mom next weekend, he said. In the 3/4 of a year Dan and I had been together, I hadn't met his mom in person because his work schedule never aligned with her extensive travel plans. I'd stayed in her house a few times before, bird-sitting her mated pair of macaws, Franklin and Myrtle. Bending over the entryway table, I had examined their family photos. Sometimes she appeared as soft and wholesome as little Bo Peep with pastels and ruffles and thick, flouncy skirts. And in other photos, she was thin and gaunt, her skin sallow, like a burned-out disco queen without any of the distracting effects of refracted light. I remember the first night I stayed at her place. I found a crock pot recipe for honey mustard glazed ham torn from a women's magazine stuck to her fridge under a Disneyland magnet. And then, just beside it, a Hallmark card with 2 pink piglets wearing birthday hats and smiling in a glowing green field. I pulled the card from the fridge and read the inside. "We, wish you a very happy birthday." I thought back to Dan and this woman who raised him. Growing up, kids made fun of Dan and said that his name sounded backwards. Even the teachers thought there had been a mistake on the roll sheets, Danielson James, and they would call out, "Oh, I'm sorry, there seems to be a mistake. Is there a James Danielson here?" And he, 6 or 7 years old, would have to correct them. In middle school, he thought it was funny and just started going by James when he didn't feel like correcting his teachers. Plus, it had that cool mid-century ring to it, his friends calling him by his last name. By the time he got to senior year in high school, his nickname was Jamesy. Sophomore year of college, Jamie, and then in a playful crowning of acceptance from his newly made Latinx friends, Jaime, which naturally became Hyman. I always wondered what kind of mother would give her child a last name for a first, but now, after the spider incident, I wasn't too sure I wanted to meet her. Dan and I sat on the couch for the remainder of the day and watched an entire season of Fargo, that one where the bumbling receding hairline twin accidentally slices his own throat while wresting the picture frame from his rich, conniving brother. We drank wine and ate a new brand of nut cheese I found at the dumpster in the big parking lot behind Whole Foods. It was fully sealed when I found it, so I didn't tell Dan. I just put it in the fridge and brought it out after my 3rd glass of wine. I hit my thigh against the edge of the couch on my way back from the fridge. The excitement of eating the nut cheese and the faded loveliness of being drunk as twilight fell through the windows combined just enough to almost blot out the latest headline I read while scrolling through my phone. The US would choose not to participate in global efforts to slow the climate emergency. Alas, organic wine and artisanal nut cheese would never be enough. That's it for now. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Athena. Congratulations on your Siskiyou Prize, and we're
Thank
so
you.
glad to have you with us.
Thank you. Delighted to be here.
Our last presentation will be from Nina Elder, and then after Nina, I'll read a poem for dedicated to our incoming residents, and we have just a few more closing announcements, and then we'll close the program. Artist and researcher Nina Elder creates projects that reveal humanity's dependence on and interruption of the natural world. With a focus on changing cultures and ecologies, Nina advocates for collaboration, fostering relationships between institutions, artists, scientists, and diverse communities. Her work takes many forms, including drawings, performative lectures, pedagogy and critical writing, long-term community-based projects, and public art. Recent solo exhibitions of Nina's work have been organized by Site Santa Fe, Indianapolis Contemporary, and university museums across the US. Her work has been featured in Art in America, Vice magazine, and on PBS. Her writing has been published in American Scientist and Edge Effects Journal. Nina's research has been supported by the Andy Warhol Foundation, the Rauschenberg Foundation Award for Arts and Activism, the Pollock-Krasner Foundation, and the Mellon Foundation. Nina is an affiliate artist of the National Performance Network. She has recently held research positions at the Center for Art and Environment at the Nevada Museum of Art, the Anchorage Museum, and the Art and Ecology program at the University of New Mexico. And she was also a Sitka resident in 2016. Nina is based in Albuquerque, New Mexico, but today we are delighted to have her back at Sitka. Please join me in welcoming Nina Elder.
You can hear me. And now you can see that, right? Allison, give me a thumbs up. Great. Okay. I'm super grateful to be here and to share my work. It's an amazing experience to return to Sitka, and especially with this really cool group of residents. I want to express my extraordinary gratitude to the staff and to Jane and Frank, Sitka's dear founders. Jane and Frank's legacy is immense, and I feel really blessed to be joining with it. I just spent my summer as I usually do, in Alaska, with no electricity or running water or studio space. So it is a huge and wonderful shift to be here with a studio and in a creative nexus. My summer home is on the Athena lands. My winter home is on the Tewa Puebloan lands that are currently called Albuquerque. And I'm really thankful to all those who came before me in New Mexico and Alaska and here in Oregon and everywhere in between. This is a photo of my Alaskan landscape on July 29th of this year. Smoke was blowing over from fires that continue to burn in Siberia. We are living in a time of great insecurity and transformation. I'm determined to look at evidence of change and share it, even when it brings discomfort and unpredictability and vulnerability. Thinking about change makes people feel shaky, wobbly, and tottering. My entire art practice has been dedicated to being in change, witnessing it, and creating space to be productive within it. Stability and permanence are fantasies. The future is constantly slipping into the past. We are spinning and hurtling through space on a ball of stardust. Seas slosh in their tides, the moon fluctuates, water evaporates, and glaciers grumble. Evolution is happening. Inside you, whole ecosystems of bacteria and microbes are living out millions of lifetimes. The basis of life is change. I approach change as an opportunity, not something to fear. I want to understand how I can relate to things even as they change, especially because they change. Glaciers are often described as fragile. They are, and they are not. Glaciers carve and shape the landscape around them. They gouge and rip and rumble like bulldozers. Glaciers are at once vulnerable and immensely strong. I desire to not be rigid and inflexible, but to allow myself to feel vulnerable to the complexity of change. I want to be responsive to what surrounds me, even if that forces me to take on new forms. I want to move and be moved. The surface of a glacier is covered with cracks and ripples, stretch marks and slumps, because it has changed to fit its surroundings. If there's any one reason I'm an artist, it is because I care deeply about this tumbling, spinning ball of stardust and how life upon it unfolds. I have a relationship with this glacier. I've watched it morph and primarily shrink over the years. This glacier surprises me and sombers me, and sometimes fills me with glee. This connection is an exploration of what it means to care for something very, very different than myself. This thing is thousands of years old and a mile thick. Parts of it are dangerous and always distant. Parts of it are familiar and fun. I feel empathy for this much larger than human entity. Caring for glaciers has taught me about loving something, even as it disappears. So for many years, I have made work about geologic displacement, piles of rocks, strip mines, bomb craters, clear cuts, and pit mines. I want to show the impacts that consumerism has made in the landscape. I want to entice people to look at the evidence of industry that is easy to camouflage and forget. The way that the majority of humans exist is only made possible through minds like these. Massive, rumbling, highly engineered scenes of extraction. The camera that shot this photo, the internet that is streaming this into your home, the device on which you watch this, the chair you're sitting on, the clothes you're wearing, the contact lenses on your eyeballs, the medicines you might have taken this morning, the mug which held your coffee. None of this would be possible without extractive industry. We've created systems that stabilize dominant society and, in the process, have destabilized the earth. Vast portions of the planet have been sacrificed. I uphold these sites as monuments to what has been destroyed and obfuscated in the process. Ecological systems, indigenous cultures, workers' rights, the interconnectedness of life. These holes in the ground will not go away, but the power that created them can and will be challenged. This is a drawing of a quarry in Indiana. The stone that came from this quarry became the United States Pentagon. This delicate and crumbling place gives me hope when I think about the seeming dominance of the US military. Very powerful things can erode. I've thought deeply about monuments, something that is the center of a much needed public dialogue and action right now. I've wondered if change is the only constant. Why do we try to make something permanent by carving it in stone? Because of my relationship to geology, and to glaciers, and to mines, I see stone as something that has been formed and something that will keep transforming. I was able to build a monument for the city of Indianapolis over the last several years. In working with the local community and engaging the geology of the area, I worked to place a large fractured block of limestone at the new Indianapolis Justice Center. It is a monument to the changing shape of power. It will crumble. This block will not be maintained, and it will eventually return to the soil. This decision was made early this year, before I knew that Ahmaud Arbery had been killed by white vigilantes near Brunswick, Georgia, before George Floyd was killed by the Minneapolis police, before police killed Breonna Taylor as she slept in her bed. As the force and funding of police come into public questioning, I am honored and invigorated to create something that will remind law enforcement, judges, and lawyers that power is relational, and then it shifts and it can always take on new forms. In recent months, I've become increasingly interested in the fraying of power. This moment in time, this very insecure moment, seems to be a time of fissures and ruptures and breaks. As we are facing social, ecological, and political upheavals, I am determined to focus on what emerges. I found this strap deep in a forest. It is very mysterious and intriguing. It is the most exhausted thing I've held in my hands. This strap has held great weight. It has been trusted. My meticulous drawing process allows me to seek out the faith that a person wants invested in this strap. Looking at these forms, I contemplate something that might appear obsolete, used up, of no use. Making these drawings of the strap in this frayed form allows me to understand the strength it once had. What happens when the things we trust fail and when the things we depend on break? They continue to hold an aura of that relationship. This strap is a document of everything it ever did. Although the opposite of broken is whole, you cannot unbreak something. These drawings ask what comes after the breaking point. In exploring this thing that is done doing what it was meant to do, I feel gratitude. I want to dignify what remains. To be in denial of change is not only unnatural, but does not allow for a more holistic future to emerge. When we start to implicate ourselves in change, we go through growing pains, and then we also learn to be nimble. I have often stated that it will not be the same, but it might be beautiful, which has become the title for my newest ongoing work. This summer, with the support of the National Performance Network and the Speranza Foundation, I worked with Alaskan cinematographer Mike Conti to create a multimedia project that addresses change and impermanence, looking to breakage and emergence, human legacies, and geologic time. These are puzzle stones, rocks that have been shattered by extreme temperature shifts. In Alaska, they have recently been ejected by a glacier. They are enigmatic and alluring, fragile and strong. I am inspired to make this work because we can witness these rocks in the midst of their transformation. This time of rapid change asks us to be involved and responsive as it happens. We cannot wait to see how the world remakes itself. I'm finding it increasingly important to explore how we care for something, even as it crumbles. I started this work because I often feel that the world is in pieces, and I have no sure way to reassemble it. But this state of insecurity and crumbling does not make me stop seeking what comes next. Because I know this planet is forever impacted by my actions does not mean I will abandon it. To acknowledge our roles in systemic oppression and injustice does not mean we have fixed the problem. I wanted to see what would happen if I asked people to carefully and self-consciously pick up these rocks that are very unstable. How do we engage with change and take an active role in change, even if that is very uncomfortable and causes moments of instability? After creating these videos in the field, we then worked with a wide range of people in Anchorage, asking them to attempt to reassemble the shattered stones. It was meaningful to spend time discussing how we feel about the future, what changes we observe, and what we are going to do with the pieces of what once was. While here at Sitka, I am making drawings from the video stills. The drawings are large and made of forest fire charcoal and industrial pulp mill waste. Drawing these tiny details at a quite large scale is a way for me to look at the fractures and see what has broken and what remains. I feel haunted by this work, this acknowledgement of brokenness, but I feel it is necessary. How do we act in a way that asserts that even though the future is unknowable and often unthinkable, we will act for its betterment? It began as a title for this work, and these rocks, these social interactions, these drawings, they are helping me to understand that it will not be the same, but it might be beautiful. So thank you all so much. I'm really thankful to be here.
Thank you, Nina, and welcome back. We're just thrilled to have you back with us. As we bring tonight's program to a close, I invite you to save the dates for our next two live streaming events. The first is on October 15th at 4 p.m. Pacific time, when we will host a reading with past Sitka poet in residence, Allison Hutchcraft. Allison will read on October 15th from her new book of poems entitled Swale. And then on November 8th, also at 4 p.m. Pacific time, we will host our next resident show and tell. So I hope you will all come back and meet some of the next people who will be joining us on Sitka's campus. If you're interested in having your own Sitka residency experience, we have raffle tickets available. You can win a stay on our Oregon Coast campus with your own private apartment and studio space. And you can find out more about the raffle at the sitkacenter.org website and through our upcoming newsletters. We'll do the drawing on November 2, so you have about a month to purchase tickets. The start of the fall residency season feels like a threshold to me. So here's a poem for all of you, our residents. This is a poem by Louise Glick, who won the Nobel Prize for Literature today, and it is called Evening Star. Tonight, for the first time in many years, there appeared to me again a vision of the Earth's splendor. In the evening sky, the first star seemed to increase in brilliance as the Earth darkened, until at last it could grow no darker, and the light, which was the light of death, seemed to restore to Earth its power to console. There were no other stars, only the one whose name I knew, as in my other life I did her injury. Venus, star of the early evening, to you I dedicate my vision, since on this blank surface you have cast enough light to make my thought visible again. Welcome to Samantha and Kirsten and Phil, Athena and Nina. We're so pleased to host you at Sitka. Thanks to everyone for joining, including many past residents. I've been sneaking peeks at the list of folks streaming live through Zoom, so thank you. Present residents and past residents, thanks everyone for joining us today. From everyone at Sitka, we wish you all a good night. Thanks.